Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half-staff, calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land.
A lot of you would not hear this coming from me due to the color of my skin, so I'm gonna let the homie speak it.
Is this the guy you're calling a racist?
Be one thing that white people and black people have different biologically.
Don't change the question of this, like DNA-wise, we are different.
No, we're not. That's a lie. It has been disproven. Front page of National Geographic 6 months ago. Racism created by society. Race is a social construct that I want to break out of.
Hold up. He doesn't even believe in race. The Oxford English Dictionary defines racism as prejudice based on race, or the belief that some races are inherently superior. But if Charlie's a racist, why is he arguing race doesn't exist? If he's a white supremacist, doesn't he need race to be real? I mean, you can't be a racial supremacist while arguing racial categories are fake.
Most of you have never actually met a real white supremacist, and I hope that you never have to. I have, and Charlie Kirk was the farthest thing from a white supremacist.
There are people who vehemently disagree with this idea of characterizing Charlie Kirk as a racist. And let me tell you, as a black man, I have grown up in a diverse neighborhood. Look, I attended diverse schools, and I even went to a church where the pastor was white. And I can tell you with a degree of certainty why they don't see what it is that black folks are talking about, or anybody else. They don't even see what you're talking about when you are calling Charlie Kirk a racist or white supremacist. And even if you were to make your case, there are some that would be just so quick to dismiss all of this stuff that y'all have compiled together. They just dismiss it and call it irrelevant. You see, and they'll just call you some sort of crybaby and woke. It's just anything to dismiss you. There is a pervading habit found amongst those in the so-called white society where being oblivious is more common than external introspection, where they stand on the outside of their own community and observe this shit and be like, what is it that everybody is seeing? Why is it that they are labeling us this way? There's a habit in their society to look externally and point at everybody else, but not really look at their own stuff, identify themselves according to party rather than race, and then look at why this is happening. See, both the left and the right segments of white society have a habit of speaking in a language that gives the impression that black America is one big Negro, but they never look at themselves and say, we are one big Caucasian. No, they break themselves down into different parties, and I, as a black man who have observed a lot of white society, I look at them and I'll say that they are broken down into 4 categories. And each of these 4 categories, whether you're on the left or the right, each of these 4 categories exist in the left side of white society and the right side of white society. And each of these 4 categories have their positive and their negative aspects. Now, you may have never heard this before, but I'm about to break it down to you, because oftentimes you'll have well-meaning dialogue that gets lost in translation. And you'll walk around believing that something is wrong with the people that called you a racist, rather than grasp the fact that intention has absolutely nothing to do with interpretation. The way that you meant it ain't got shit to do with how you said it. And how you said it ain't got nothing to do with how it was received. Because if your intention is to do something better and to make something better, then you have to understand who it is that you're speaking with. Because there is, I believe, a Japanese word that sounds like nigga.
Niga or nigai means bitter.
There's even a Chinese word that sounds like nigga, but it don't mean the same thing. But if you run around saying your Japanese word, nigga, not understanding who it is that you're talking to, it is received differently. Has 2 different meanings. So your intention ain't got nothing to do with interpretation. Now, I don't presume to be the spokesperson of the universal sentiment of black people. I don't presume to be the spokesperson for the universal foundation of black American, even though I am foundation of black American. I don't speak on the behalf of everybody else who's FBA. So with that disclaimer out of the way, look, there is a section of America called white society. And of white society, it is divided into two sections. You have lily white and trying to be white. Examples of lily white would be something like Donald Trump. And trying to be white, you'll find like an Arab, the Hispanics like Fat Joe, white on your driver's license, and all these other sort of people who don't pass the I'm white eye test, but you're white on paper. These are the lily whites and trying to be whites. See, but for the purposes of this discussion, we'll only look and focus on the circumstances of white America taking place amongst the lily whites. Now, in lily white society, there are those who have leftist leanings and those who are on the right, leanings to the right. And of those who are on the right and of those who are on the left, each of these segments of lily white society are broken down into yet another 4 classes of white people. And in no specific order, you'll have white folks, white trash, white people, and white supremacists. And this is why if you were to call Charlie Kirk a white supremacist, there are constituents amongst the lily whites and the trying to be whites who would vehemently disagree with you. They say, oh, white supremacists, racist? What are you talking about? No, he's not. So I'm going to break it down for you and show you what it is that black folks see and what it is that white folks are seeing and why something's getting lost in translation here. So let's begin with the white trash segment. Now, this is a term that white society uses quite frequently, especially in the South. And they use this to identify a certain class of white folks who you might find probably living in a trailer park. You ever seen that show, The Ozarks? You got a lot of those. They call these the white trash. You'll find them living in like trailer parks or in a neighborhood that is disproportionately black. And sometimes they even call the rural ones that, but look, these are the white folks that white society likes to hide under the bed or keep in the closet. These are the ones out there in West Virginia doing all that nonsense that they were doing. The hills have eyes. Or these are the ones who say, catch me outside, how about that? That's that side of white society. This is a side of white society that embarrasses all the other segments of white society. See, but in the white trash segment of white society, even though they may be embarrassing all the other segments of white society and be shunned and ostracized by them, even in that segment of white society, you have those who like black people and those who don't.
I got calls from as far away as Ireland asking, is Zinc the most racist town in America?
Now, what's your thoughts on that?
I told them, well, we used to be, but we lost the title. But don't worry, we'll get it back next year.
The next segment, in no specific order, of white society is called, these are just simply white folks. See, these are just your everyday average American white people who just want to go to work, raise their family, and live in peace. Now, ask them if Charlie Kirk, or if they think or they believe that Charlie Kirk was a racist, and you might find that most of their opinions about whether or not he was a racist will depend on whether or not they identify politically with the left or the right. See, but in the white folk segment of white society, you'll mostly encounter people who they just kind of want to live their life. They're in pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is just the normal white folks. See, now you might run into some of them who have preconceived notions about black folks, right? And this is pretty much normal. This is normal in the same way that black folks have a preconceived notion that white folks cannot season chicken to save their lives. You see, but is usually after being exposed to some sort of different experience. Like you have to be exposed to something different. And then being exposed to something different, that challenges their prejudices. You see, because it's common to see white folks make an exception for certain select black folks who don't fit the description. Fit the description in the fear-mongering media. See, some of them might even be cool with interracial marriage and multicultural adoption. These are the white folks. So a lot of them, like just regular white folks, some of them have prejudices that people would call racism, or they'll label them as white supremacists because, hey, they are susceptible to the same prejudices that we are. The fear-mongering media, black folks think white folks can't cook and they put mayonnaise on every damn thing. And white folks might be under the impression that black folks are prone to criminality until they see otherwise. They at least will treat the ones that they see differently. They'll treat them differently. Oh, these my good boy. Oh, yeah, these my black friends. But they ain't about to go to no damn hood. Oh, hell no. And out of the class of regular white folk, you'll even have abolitionists and revolutionaries that really rock with black people, like John Brown. So he ain't no white supremacist or racist. He's regular white folk that's like, I'm just standing on behalf of justice. Bam. That's regular white folks. Now the next segment of white society is the most infamous one that a lot of people is being labeled, and that's white supremacists. And this is the term that is used the most, and it is the term that I believe that perplexes those who are of the white folks segment of society. It kind of bothers them, like, why are you labeling them as a white supremacist? Just like this guy in the video. He cannot fathom, he don't see it. Like, why would you call them white supremacists? That's kind of weird. So that title perplexes a lot of white people. See, because in white supremacist society, you have two sections in that section. You have the doers and the watchers. You see, and that's why, this guy would be like, no, I've seen white supremacists. This ain't no white supremacy. See? There's a disconnect in how you label them. You see, you have the doers and the watchers in white supremacist society. And the doers, they're the ones who actually do the lynching. And the watchers, they're the ones who come for the show. See? See, if you were to look at some of these old photos where a black person was lynched, you'll see a crowd of white people that came just to take a selfie. See, now they didn't participate in stringing up that black dude by the neck, but they sure weren't about to miss the show. See, these are the watchers. Yeah, and the watchers often, they move beneath the radar. You see, they don't mind there being a purge, all right? But they also want to keep their hands clean. They keep their hands clean while watching the doers do their thing. So you'll have somebody who is a vehement white supremacist, and then you'll have black people who would protest against this, and then you have a segment of white society that say they don't hate black people, but they will speak against their claim to dissipate the energy of their protest. And they'll say, I don't see white supremacy in that. I just see them speaking against their claim about this so-called white supremacist rhetoric, right? So how do I liken that? I liken that unto this. You'll have someone who is violating someone, taking their innocence. You have someone taking their innocence, and then you'll have the other person right there who ain't taking their innocence, but yet they're holding their hand over the person's mouth to keep them from screaming. You have one person that's actually doing the act, violating them, taking it from them, and the other person who said, I'm not doing that, but yet they have their hand over that person's mouth to keep them from screaming. They don't want to hear them damn screams. And they can't see the difference that in white supremacist society, there are the doers and the watchers. The watchers hold their hands over the mouth, or they sit by watching but ain't got no problem. Or they only do they protest in silence. And the doers are the ones doing it. So you'll have this guy, I don't see it. Blah, 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 blah. Your idea of white supremacists is not, they look at it as the people that string you up, but they don't see it as the people who stand by watching, taking selfies, or covering their hands over the mouth of those who protest to silence them. That's the white supremacist. So when this man makes a video expressing his disagreement with labeling Charlie Kirk as a white supremacist, if you understand how white people compartmentalize white supremacists, then you have to agree that he has a point. Maybe Charlie Kirk ain't no white supremacist. See, this is how you get the white supremacist who qualifies their not being a white supremacist, by letting you know their best friend is black, or their spouse is black, right? Or something else that communicates that they don't hate you because of your race. And we can see that Charlie Kirk was a white man who was friends with black Candace Owens, right? So he can't be no white supremacist. And we can see that Charlie Kirk was a white man who expressed disdain for the black Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. However, he expressed delight for the black Dr. Thomas Sowell. So why would you call him a white supremacist? Obviously, he has black friends. And this is because Charlie Kirk was in what I believe to be the fourth segment of so-called white society. Charlie Kirk was a part of the so-called white society called white people. See, white people are the arrogant sector of white society. See, they'll piss off the white supremacists because they ain't supremacists enough. And they'll piss off the regular white folks because they come across as stubborn and elitist and arrogant. See, now, is it possible to be a white person and a white supremacist? I won't dismiss the possibility, but white people have a dominant trait, sentiment, supremacy. See, it is a dominant trait of sentiment supremacy over racial superiority. Sentiment supremacy. See, they could be one of your best friends despite your race, so long as you agree with what it is that they believe in. See, their rhetoric will be classified as racism, right? When they find themselves at odds with a community that is disproportionately black, and this community that is disproportionately black, they find themselves, they think that they're just disagreeing with these people's sentiment. You know, no, you got it all wrong. No, I don't see your skin as the problem. This is how they think. No, it's the way you think that is the problem. See, but their arrogance is so thick that they cannot concede to a universal truth, because for them, for the white people, winning is often more important than being right. Winning takes precedence to being correct. Winning takes precedence to empathy and understanding what it is and how these people see things and their perspective and what it is that they experience in their respective parts of the world. You see, white people seek their own reflection. That's what Charlie Kirk was. And it ain't got nothing to do with his skin specifically. See, because there are rich white people who, despite how white you are, they will be more comfortable in the company of a black person in the upper class than with a white person in the middle class. And then there are educated white people who, despite how white you are, they will be more comfortable in the company of a black person who has been educated at an Ivy League school. versus a white person educated at an HBCU. See, there are political white people who will champion a black man as a role model, so long as that black man is Clarence Thomas and not Kendrick Lamar. See, they'll reject the title of racist or white supremacist because, please. Yeah, they don't see themselves as hating your skin. They see themselves as hating how you think. And a white person's arrogance is legendary.
You know, the problem with Charlie Kirk is I think he's insincere. I think he's arrogant. You look at his demeanor when he does these ask me anything or whatever, when he goes to these colleges, he doesn't make eye contact. He's not polite. He's very dismissive, very rude. And I think it's really a shell game. The whole thing, I'm not knocking him. I think he's very successful. He's built this organization, Turning Point. You can't knock it. It's a very big, successful group. They've had some advantages. It is what it is.
See, but when you aren't receiving yourself, when you aren't on the outside looking at how they are receiving you, when you aren't receiving yourself, your arrogance will place intention over interpretation. See, these types of people, they speak the words that white supremacists use to justify their hatred.
And hearing people with selective rage who were mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life.
See, in the same way that hip-hop artists were held accountable for their lyrics and blamed for contributing to the perpetuation of violence in the so-called black community, is the same way that black people have looked at Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. They'll look at his rhetoric and see that it's being used by a radicalized segment of white society to justify their hatred. See, because he does not have the nuance for his own white clan. He finds himself arguing against the blackness or black segments of of American society, but he does not label them as left. There's an implicit bias in Charlie Kirk to immediately equate black problematic behaviors as a black community issue, while denying that there are segments of white society that have their issues, and specifically they are found in the white trash segment, but they throw them underneath the bed and don't want to even look at that. So it takes empathy, I believe, which means step outside of yourself and see how it is that you're being received, which he was not interested in. He was more interested in sympathy, and sympathy is something that you connect with because it is more in tandem with how you feel. S-Y-M, sympathy. And that prefix, S-Y-M, translates to with, together, or the same, which means he'll connect with you as long as you think the same way. He has sympathy, not empathy. That's why he cannot see how he can be called racist or white supremacist, because he cannot step outside of himself and see how he is being received. We can acknowledge that there is a malignant side that takes the sentiment, turns it into an organization, and poisons the sentiment by their nefarious actions of selfishness in the organization called Black Lives Matter. We can acknowledge that. But can y'all on the right? Can the so-called white, so-called conservatives acknowledge that there's two segments of MAGA? That there are those who say make America great again because they want to bring back industrialism to America, bring back manufacturing to America, increase the high school graduation rates in America. Can we acknowledge that there's that side that calls himself MAGA And that there's another side that calls themselves MAGA because they want to bring back the 1950s. They want to bring back the pre-civil rights era. They want to bring back the disenfranchised state of black Americans. They want to bring back the idea of white reign supreme. Can we acknowledge that amongst the MAGA group there are more than one sentiment? There's the organization and then there's more than one sentiment. You're unwilling to acknowledge that because of your arrogance, because of your agenda. You point so much to the left and you're unwilling to acknowledge that. Can we acknowledge while Charlie Kirk, while you say that he was not a white supremacist, he damn sure was pushing the idea of a national identity.
You must have a serious picture of national identity. We do not have a picture of, and it's, again, I'm not saying it's racial.
But when he is disproportionately attacking the things that are taking place within black society, can we acknowledge that he is insinuating, or at least that there's a segment of society that interprets that to mean black society is a threat to our national identity?